Designer babies, genetic disease, Gattaca. How close are we to customizing humanity? You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Hello and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. That's Matt behind the camera. I'm Ben, that makes this stuff they don't want you to know. This week we looked at some fascinating things. We examined the strange history of eugenics in the United States. And we have an audio podcast coming out on that soon, so do check it out. And by the way, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes if you are feeling charitable. Second, we looked at real-life superpowers or extraordinary abilities. And today we wanted to dive a bit deeper into the science of genetic modification. There are 3 things we should know about it. First, it's older than you might think. It dates back to the 1960s when people first discovered enzymes that could sort of cut and paste DNA. Second, it's not just one process or one technique. Genetic modification is sort of an umbrella term for some differing things that have a little bit in common, but not as much as you would think. Third, genetic modification as a concept is widely misunderstood, and it could be some of the most valuable medicine that we discover this century. So let's look at the history. We started in the 1960s with the enzymes that could cut and paste DNA. By 1970, a fellow named Stanfield Rogers proposed that we would be able to insert good DNA to replace faulty DNA. What does this mean exactly? Well, let's look at an example. One of the big milestones in genetic engineering occurred in 1990 when a girl named Ashanti De Silva, who suffered from a genetic disorder known as ADA, was treated to gene therapy. The researchers removed white blood cells from her, and via a retrovirus, that's right, a virus, they modified the DNA in those white blood cells, reintroduced it to De Silva, and the treatment had a degree of success. That's amazing. That's astonishing. That's frightening. But let's go ahead and talk about the different types of genetic engineering, because as we said, they're not all created equal. Well, if we divide it into just some rough buckets, then let's say we have 3 things. We have somatic engineering. Now, somatic engineering would be altering the genetic structure, the DNA of a certain organ or a certain type of tissue. And it's important to realize that when we do that, if we somehow genetically modify Matt so that he has a specific organ or body tissue that's functioning differently, then he's not going to pass that DNA on to any children he has. However, Matt, if we take you and we modify you with a germ-line technique, then what we'd be doing is altering sperm or egg or embryo that creates a change in the person that's going to be born. And when that person is born with that change made, then that means that they pass on this modified gene to anyone that they produce later. So that's one of the big differences. The third thing we should probably mention also is cloning. Not just cloning a person entire from a different person, but cloning an embryo for research purposes, which gets very close to mad science. Which brings us to the next point. What are the implications of genetic engineering? Should prenatal engineering be banned? Or should a parent be allowed to say, I want my kid to weigh around 300 pounds, to be 6'5", and have, one purple eye and then like one green eye, because obviously I'm bad at making decisions in the doctor's office. Moving on, it does give us some interesting implications. If we think about that movie Gattaca, which I mentioned earlier at the top of the video, in the plot of the movie Gattaca, and this is not too big of a spoiler, the world is sort of organized hierarchically by whether or not someone has had genetic engineering before they were born on themselves as a sperm or an egg or an embryo. And the way that it works is eerily plausible because it's not so much a state law banning people from certain occupations as it is a private company, insurance companies saying, you're too risky to be part of these things. So people who are born naturally become second-class citizens. Another thing, kind of a populist argument that you'll hear, is that being that this kind of therapy could be very expensive, we may see a speciation along class lines. So imagine a world where the wealthy are clearly visible and biologically different in some way than everyone else. Now, it sounds like dystopian science fiction, and for now it is, and I hope it doesn't get to that point, but there are other very positive implications. Imagine if we could eradicate a disease, remove a disease entirely from the human species at large. This makes me think of the scientists throughout history who have made a moral decision to place the good of humanity over a paycheck. This makes me think of Jonas Salk and polio, and this makes me hope that gene therapy of the future is not going to be limited by somebody's profit margin. It needs to be noted, this is by no means perfect. For all the implications, there are tremendous complications. When we look at the gene therapy experiments that have been done on animals or transgenic experiments that have been done on mice specifically, what we notice is that there is an alarming failure rate. Now, in the world of animal experimentation, a failure rate is expected and definitely tolerated. But do we have an ethical quandary experimenting on human embryos or people who have already been born knowing full well that they could die as a result of the treatment? What threshold of failure becomes acceptable when we're talking about human life? The reason that this is an important question is because we're going to end on the future of genetic modification, which is this: it is inevitable. The potential of the technology, its medicinal value alone, means that research on this will continue and there will be huge innovations made, most likely within your lifetime. Will they be perfect? No. Will they cure everything? Probably not. Will it be affordable for everyone? Well, that depends on who is in charge of making the discoveries and the decisions. Right now it's not me. I don't think it's you, Matt. So we're gonna have to wait and see if a Jonas Salk emerges in the future of gene therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you think about the idea of selective breeding and eugenics. Let us know what you think about designer babies. Let us know what you think about genetic engineering, real-life superpowers, and what we should cover in our upcoming episodes. Find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. We're Conspiracy Stuff at both of those. And as always, stay tuned. Oh, and here's a question. If you're still watching the end of this video, are you ever watching a video on YouTube and you think, well, who's watching me? Do you ever hang out with friends, maybe just a community of vegans or maybe some political activists, and think, how well do I know these people? We'll see you next week.